Communism is a political and economic ideology that has shaped the course of history in significant ways. With its roots in the works of Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels, communism seeks to address issues of class struggle, wealth inequality, and the role of the state. In this review, we will delve into the key ideas of communism, its historical context, its various interpretations, and its impact on the world.
Before we dive in, if you find this content valuable, please hit that like button, subscribe to our channel, and leave a comment below. It truly helps us grow. Now, let's get started.
Historical context. To understand communism, we must first consider its historical context. It emerged in the 19th century as a response to the harsh conditions faced by industrial workers during the early stages of the Industrial Revolution. The industrialization of Europe brought about rapid urbanization and the concentration of wealth in the hands of a few industrialists. This led to the exploitation of the working class, who endured long hours, low wages, and poor living conditions. Class struggle. One of the central tenets of communism is the concept of class struggle. Karl Marx, in collaboration with Friedrich Engels, argued that society is divided into two primary classes: the bourgeoisie, who own the means of production, and the proletariat, who sell their labor in exchange for wages. The bourgeoisie, they asserted, would exploit the labor of the proletariat to accumulate wealth, resulting in a growing divide between the two classes. This class struggle, Marx believed, was an inherent feature of capitalism. Communism seeks to address this class struggle by advocating for the abolition of private property and the means of production, thus eliminating the economic distinctions between the bourgeoisie and the proletariat. In a communist society, the means of production are collectively owned, and wealth is distributed more equitably, the dictatorship of the proletariat. Marx's ideology also introduced the concept of the dictatorship of the proletariat. This phrase might sound authoritarian, but it's important to understand that Marx envisioned it as a transitional phase in the evolution from capitalism to communism. During this period, the working class would take control of the state apparatus to safeguard the interests of the proletariat. The aim was to prevent counter-revolution and ensure a smooth transition to a classless society. Abolition of private property. The abolition of private property is a fundamental principle of communism. Marx believed that private property, especially in the means of production, was the root cause of class divisions and inequality. In a communist society, all property, including land, factories, and resources, would be collectively owned and managed for the benefit of all. This idea represents a dramatic departure from the capitalist concept of individual property rights. A classless society. Communism envisions a classless society where wealth and power differentials are eliminated. In this utopian vision, there would be no social hierarchy, and everyone would have access to the same opportunities and resources. The goal is to create a society in which individuals are not defined by their economic or social status, but rather by their contributions to the collective welfare. Critiques of communism. While communism's ideals of wealth redistribution and classlessness are appealing to many, the implementation of these ideas has been highly controversial. Critics argue that communism often leads to authoritarian regimes, limited individual freedoms, and economic inefficiency. Authoritarian regimes. One of the most significant criticisms of communism is its association with authoritarian regimes. In practice, many communist states have been characterized by one-party rule, censorship of free speech, and a lack of political pluralism. The justification for such measures is often framed as necessary to protect the revolution and the interests of the working class. However, this has frequently led to abuses of power and human rights violations. Economic inefficiency. Critics also contend that communism can lead to economic inefficiency due to the lack of market mechanisms. In a centrally planned economy, where the state controls production and distribution, there is often less incentive for innovation and competition. This can result in resource misallocation and shortages of goods and services. Limited individual freedoms. Another concern is the potential for limited individual freedoms in a communist society. The collective ownership of property and resources may restrict individual autonomy and choices. Critics argue that when the state has significant control over the means of production and distribution, it can also have a say in many aspects of people's lives, leading to a lack of personal freedoms. Variations of communism. It's important to note that communism is not a monolithic ideology, and there are variations and interpretations of its principles. Some of the key variations include 1. Marxism-Leninism. This variant, associated with figures like Vladimir Lenin, emphasizes the need for a vanguard party to lead the working class and implement the revolution. It has been influential in the development of many communist states. 2. Anarchist communism. This branch of communism rejects the idea of a transitional state and advocates for the immediate abolition of the state, with a focus on direct democracy and self-governance. 3. Maoism. Developed by Mao Zedong, this variant incorporates elements of Chinese culture and rural agrarianism into communism. It places a strong emphasis on the role of peasants in the revolution. The global impact of communism. Communism has left a lasting impact on the world, both ideologically and geopolitically. The 20th century saw the rise of several communist states, and their interactions with capitalist countries shaped the dynamics of the Cold War. Communist states. The most prominent communist states include the Soviet Union, China, Cuba, North Korea, and various Eastern European countries during the Cold War era. These states often promoted their own interpretations of communism, leading to variations in policies and outcomes. The Cold War. The Cold War was a geopolitical and ideological conflict between the United States and its Western allies, representing capitalism, and the Soviet Union and its Eastern Bloc allies, representing communism. The two superpowers engaged in a tense standoff, with the threat of nuclear war looming over the world. The competition between these two ideological blocs shaped international relations for decades. The fall of communism. The late 20th century witnessed the gradual collapse of many communist regimes. The Soviet Union dissolved in 1991, marking the end of the Cold War, and Eastern European countries transitioned to market-oriented economies and multi-party systems. China, meanwhile, implemented economic reforms while maintaining its one-party rule. Contemporary communism. Today, communism continues to exist in various forms. While the global influence of classical communism has waned, there are still communist parties and movements in different countries advocating for socialist and communist ideals. Some countries, like Cuba and North Korea, maintain communist governments, albeit with different levels of isolation and adaptation to the modern world. Conclusion. Communism, as an ideological and political framework, has had a profound impact on the course of history. It emerged as a response to the inequalities and injustices of early industrial capitalism, with a vision of a classless society where wealth and power were collectively shared. However, the practical implementation of communism has often faced challenges, resulting in critiques related to authoritarianism, economic inefficiency, and limited individual freedoms. While classical communism may have declined in global influence, its legacy endures through variations and interpretations of its principles. The impact of communism on the world, including the Cold War and the subsequent fall of the Soviet Union, has left an indelible mark on modern history. Understanding the key ideas and historical context of communism is essential for comprehending the complex and multifaceted narrative of the 20th and 21st centuries. In conclusion, communism is a multifaceted ideology with its roots in addressing class struggle, wealth inequality, and the abolition of private property. Its historical context, which emerged in response to the inequalities of early industrial capitalism, is essential for understanding its development and global impact. The key ideas of communism, including the dictatorship of the proletariat, the abolition of private property, and the aspiration for a classless society, continue to shape political discourse and movements worldwide. While communism has faced significant criticism due to its association with authoritarian regimes, economic inefficiency, and potential limitations on individual freedoms, it remains a source of inspiration for those who seek alternatives to capitalist systems. Variations of communism, such as Marxism-Leninism, anarchist communism, and Maoism, showcase the adaptability of these ideas to different historical and cultural contexts. The global impact of communism, including the Cold War and the fall of the Soviet Union, has left a lasting imprint on international relations and politics. Despite the decline of classical communism, contemporary manifestations and movements continue to advocate for socialist and communist ideals, ensuring that the legacy of communism persists in the modern world. In the ongoing dialogue about economic systems, social justice, and political ideology, communism remains a significant reference point, challenging societies to consider alternatives to address the pressing issues of our time. The study of communism is a journey through history, ideology, and the ongoing pursuit of a more equitable and just world.